Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To my Muslim student, hi everyone. Hi all my students. Okay, today we are going to continue with our next topic. Still under law of contract, we will focus on the discharge of the contract. So previously we have finished all the elements to see whether the contract is valid or not. What are the scenarios that lead the contract to be void? What are the scenarios that lead the contract to be voidable? So now we focus on how to identify the situation that lead the contract to be discharged, or what are the scenario that will lead the contract to be discharged, and how the discharge of the contract can be done. Okay, either way. So basically for this topic, the really outcome is you must be able to at least to know when the contract is become to the end. Okay, what are the scenario that lead to the contract to be ended? What are the methods that are applicable to discharge the contract? And what are the implications when you are able or you already choose which discharge of the contract is possible to be adopted, depending on the scenario. Okay, so basically before we go on the methods, let's see when does a contract end? In what situation we can say that the contract can be discharged? When we say the contract that can be discharged, we always referring to the completion of the contract. When we talk about completion of the contract, means both party, either offerer or offeree, or when it comes to contract, we call this one as promiser and promisee, has carried out all the obligation or what they have promised to do. So that is number one. They have carried out all the obligation, all the performance of the contract have been carried out properly. Number two, when does a contract become to the end? When each person in the contract agrees to end the contract. So number two, there are also possibility that the contract will be discharged through agreement. Okay, so that one we will discuss later. This is referring to statement number two. Each person in the contract agrees to end. We will look at the term discharge by agreement, and then also you will see the word novation in this lecture. Okay, so basically one of the method is when the original contract is rescinded, or let's say you have a contract. This is the introductory only. A having the contract with B. So let's say B suggested that the contract is going to be ended, or can we discharge the contract by agreement and form another new set of contract? That is the meaning where the contract can be discharged by agreement. Okay, so when one of the parties suggests or agree that the contract will come to the end, we have to make sure that the other party also agree. That is one of the method. But let's say B suggested A, okay, let's rescind the contract because I don't think I am able to perform. So in that sense, that is considered as not good way of discharging of the contract. So in that scenario, A may be able to claim compensation or damages from B because of the B's fault. Okay. Another scenario is one person in the contract breaks the contract rule, or we can say breaks the terms and condition in the contract, or maybe one of them cancel or rescind the validity of the contract. That is the third one. And number four, when one of the people in the contract dies, no contract come into liability. No one is liable. It will be automatically discharged unless the term and condition mention that there are obligation where the people who carry out, if let's say one of the people has died, it must be continued with the person who he or she trusts, maybe family members, maybe the friend, and maybe the shareholder, and so on. Okay, so that one is specific, but this is basically in general. Okay, as much as we know that the agreement are really depending on the validity of on the validity of the contract based on the elements of the building, okay, that there will be the same importance that must be placed on how a contract may be discharged. We normally should have the impression that, okay, discharge of the contract can be made either good way or bad way. Good way means you agree to carry out, you agree to discharge the contract properly after you have performed everything, or either one, maybe you can agree because you would like to have another contract with the same people, but that one is through agreement. Okay, and then it is also important to know if you have break one of the condition in the contract, what happened? Does it mean that the contract can come into enforceable, or it should be considered as ended, or one of the party has discharged from the obligation to carry out the terms and condition in the contract? A contract is said to be discharged when all parties to the contract are not required to perform any of their contractual obligation. This is what I did mention earlier, where neither party has the obligation to the said contract. That means no one longer bound to the said contract. No one longer liable to perform anything in the contract. Okay, so when this happens, all the right liabilities under the contract are denied. You cannot claim anything because everything has been discharged. But then we still have to check how the how the contract can be discharged. One of the method is by frustration. Okay, we cannot simply say, okay, because one of you did not carry out the contract, so the contract is automatically discharged. No, they should have the justification. We also have to consider the flow of the story, which one comes first. Either that scenario happened at the time the contract is being made, or maybe after the contract is being made, and the implication on the validity of the contract itself will have to be further discussed. Okay, now let's look at basically 4 main ways or method to discharge the contract. Basically, the one that I mentioned, when you fulfill all the obligation, you can actually discharge by performance. Okay, let's say you are given, let's say, simple example. Okay, A is the contractor. Where is my pen? Okay, let's say A is a contractor, B is the owner of the building or owner of the land. A is the contractor. The contractor has completed all the construction of the building. So B also finished all the payment. So you can see that both parties has carried out their obligation. So when they have carried out all their obligation, we can say that the contract can be properly discharged by performance. Number 2, as what I did mention, as a briefing, both parties must agree, then only we can say by agreement, and then you also can see the word novation after this. Number 3, by frustration, this is something that is not available, that is not avoidable. Okay, you can see in bahasa also we say contract kecewa or frust contract. Why? Neither party has the obligation to continue because of the specific reason, and some of the example that I would like to show after this. Okay, number 4 is basically by breach. That means when one of the party did not carry out the obligation, the contract, we can say that you are not performing the contract well. So the other party has the right to rescind the contract. Okay, I give you the same example in this scenario. A is the client, in this example, A is the contractor, B is the client. How you want to say that the contract is discharged by breach? Okay, let's say in this scenario, A or contractor did not carry out the obligation. The progress of the work in this month, let's say, should be 90%, but the progress of the work is just 20%, for example. So the fulfillment of the obligation is not being carried out. So what happened when one of the party did not fulfill the obligation? The other party, in this case B or the client, has the right to rescind the contract, and when he has the right to rescind the contract, he can say that A has breached the contract. So B has the right, or the client has the right to rescind the contract through breach, because the breach had been done by the other party. Now let's look at item number 1 in terms of the method. Discharge by performance, you can refer to Contract Act 1950 under clause 38. The parties to the contract must either perform or offer to perform their respective promises. Remember, when the contract become valid, the offerer will become promiser. Okay, offeree will become promisee, and then actually they are having their own obligation. Okay, in this contract also mentioned that they must either perform or offer to perform their respective promises unless the performance is dispensed with or excused under this act or any other law. Okay, so this is one of the explanation to talk about discharge by performance. That means the parties in the contract must perform their contractual obligation completely according to T&C. If you buy a ticket, for example, you are buying the flight ticket, you can see the receipt are there. So that is actually the proof of the contract that have been formed. Okay, in this case, you have to make sure that everyone who has the contract has referred to the terms and obligation in that particular contract. Okay, right. In this case, if I refer back to the statement, this means that the parties to the contract must perform their contractual liability and contractual obligation. Remember, every time you look at the word liability, it is the obligation that required to be completed, or we can say the obligation that due to be completed. Okay, something that need to be done, but it is not yet being carried out. That's why we call it as. That's why we have to consider that. Okay, when a contract is discharged by performance, both parties to the contract have completed or completely performed their contractual obligation. In this case, we can say that, okay, I am no longer responsible to you, you are no longer responsible to me. It may be applied in the scenario where we did not deal with the commercial construction project, maybe just more renovation in your house, but dealing with the commercial construction project, even though one of the party has finished, let's say contractor has finished constructing the building, but in the construction we have a defects liability period. So even though a contractor has finished carry out the work, it is not necessarily means that B has to pay 100%. Okay, maybe B in the normal scenario, B will hold certain percentage because A is responsible to take care on the defects for that particular building. Let's say the building duration of the contract is about 12 months. Okay, and then let's say let's say one of the party has completed their obligation, then no one is longer bound except during the defects liability period. So normally for the construction, we have the duration for defects liability period that is normally 2 years. Okay, look at this example. When Ali promised to sell his cow to Bong at 3,000, the contract will be discharged by performance when Ali delivers the cow to Bong and Bong pays the price of the cow. Okay, so this is for you to see the difference between the clause that you have to refer in section number 38, and then what are the scenario available in the construction industry, and the issue of the defects liability period. Okay, If there is the slight, if there are slight deviation from the terms of the contract, basically the party not in fault. Okay, what is the meaning of the party not in fault? The party not in fault here are referring to the injured party. As what I told you before, I think previously also at the beginning of learning civil and criminal law, you can see that we are using the word the injured party or the aggrieved party or the party not in fault. Okay, so these are the terms that you have to be familiar with. In this case, the party not in fault, that means the party who is not the person who rescind the contract or cancel the contract will be entitled to say that the contract has not been performed. Okay, so basically we can conclude into two scenarios. He may sue for the damages for the breach of contract, and he may elect himself, means he may treat himself discharged from further performance. Okay, I give you another simple example. A is the contractor, okay, and then B is the client. Okay, let's say B did not pay to A, then maybe A is not going to um, further carry out with that particular obligation. Okay, so number two, elect to treat himself discharged from the further performance of the contract. Okay, they has the option whether they want to sue for the damages only, or maybe just treat myself discharged from further obligation of the contract. Okay, one simple example is when A is not completed the construction, uh, the construction uh, for a certain item. B is not, or the government or the private sector is not required to pay. Okay,